everyone. Good to see everyone on the Zoom here. Good that we can join and talk about the continued work on the Spring Hill Park Plan. I want to thank everyone for all their engagement in the past and also all their feedback online on the Engage page. So as you recall, there were a couple different concepts. I'm probably going into Andrea's area here, but I'm just gonna be quick. There's a couple different options that were presented, but with all the different feedback, I think there's been a great plan that's been put together here. In addition to that, I'm happy to talk about the work of actually connecting the park that was done, that you all have seen with the sidewalk that goes from at the very edge of the top of Rhine all the way down to the park, connects around Brady Funeral Home. I know that was one of the asks that was outside of this, outside of the money for the park improvement, but just like I said last time, we wanted to include that and get that done. So happy to report that that's all done and it looks great. We still need to get some trees in those planters, but besides that, looking to eventually see everyone walk down the park and enjoy the amenities that are going to be here. So I'll pass it off to Andrea.
Thanks, Councilman. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining our second community meeting. I'm going to just kick us off by introducing our project team. So my name is Andrea Ketzel. I'm the Senior Landscape Architect for the Department of Public Works, and I am managing the project for the city. I'm joined by Jan Rather, who is the Infrastructure Engagement Specialist for Neighborhood Services in the Mayor's Office, and his team has been assisting us with communications around the project and distribution of the community surveys. And of course, Councilman Wilson, who we just heard from, here supporting the project for Council District 2. And then we have a couple of members of our consultant team, John Burkle and Eric Brightman from PASHIC are here, and they'll be available to answer questions during the Q&A portion of the meeting. So I'm going to hand it back to Jan to review the agenda for the evening and our meeting norms.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Councilman and Andrea. My name is Jan Rather. I'm the Infrastructure Engagement Specialist in the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. So help with constituent outreach and engagement on projects like this, but also DOMI infrastructure projects. So you might be seeing me in some other projects in and around your neighborhood in the future. For tonight, just real quick overview of the agenda. I'll start with the objective and the norms. We'll talk through the project goals and schedule, the summary of engagement, and then we'll also have the revised concept review for the play equipment, the park building, park amenities, and then we'll move into some question and answer, and then we'll finish with next steps and closing. So real quick, just some level setting for the meeting. We want to give Andrea and her team a chance to give the presentation. I know questions may come up, but we ask that you save them or type them in the chat, just so that, in case they get answered over the course of the presentation, we don't have to interrupt for that. And then when we get to the Q&A, we're again in a virtual setting. So raise your hand. There's a little emoji to do that. Or you can type your question in the chat if you prefer for me to ask the question for you. Again, I ask that we respect each other's time. I think, we set this meeting from 6 to 8. Don't anticipate it will need to go there, but just want to make sure that everybody who has a question has time to have that answered. And again, we'll go one speaker at a time when we get to the Q&A portion. You're probably going to see some stuff that you really like. You may see some stuff that you don't like. So we're just here to welcome all perspectives, agree to disagree in peace, just so that we can move along and maintain the positive attitude about these park improvements. And then just, everybody who's in the meeting agreeing to the ownership of these norms for the meeting. I think I hand it back off to Andrea now.
So the overall goals of the project are to update the spray feature. We're going to renovate and reconfigure the playground and safety surface, as well as update the amenities in the park, like benches and landscaping. And we'll take a look at the existing trees on site and evaluate the conditions for either preservation or replacement. And we're looking also at adding lighting and safety improvements. We are evaluating feedback on the existing court spaces to see if we'll update those amenities or look at alternative programming for those spaces. We're providing ADA connections between the two areas of the site, the upper play space and the lower ball field, which are currently separated by topographic changes. And then we're also going to look at stormwater management opportunities, while also improving drainage to the sports field area, which we've heard can be a bit wet. So also depending on the preference of the community for the sports field area, we could take a look at updating the lighting, spectator seating for the field, and different amenities associated with the diamond field. We'll also discuss the existing park building and consider updating the restrooms and kitchen, and we'll get into that a little bit more tonight. And then finally, providing signage and connections to the greenway. Next slide. So this graphic takes a high-level look at the overall schedule for the project. So we kicked off this project last winter with the initial community engagement survey. We held our first community meeting earlier this year in March, where, as the councilman mentioned before, we presented 2 different concepts and several options for the playground equipment. We followed up that second community meeting with another survey, which we kept open through spring and early summer of this year to make sure we were reaching as many people as possible. Throughout the summer, the design team revised the feedback into a final concept, which came from those surveys in the first community meeting. And now we are at our second community meeting, which you can see highlighted in yellow on the schedule here. And then after tonight's meeting, we'll need to schedule what's called a development activities meeting, which happens when there's an RCO in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get that scheduled in conjunction with tonight's meeting, but we'll make sure that happens sometime this fall. And then we'll plan to move into construction documents and permitting this winter, with the aim to bid out the project in spring of 2024, and then ideally wrapping up in spring or summer of 2025. And I just want to mention that we do sometimes get caught up on permitting approvals, so that oftentimes extends the timeline out if it's not within our favor. So just to keep that in mind, that there should be a little bit of flexibility built into this, but we do try to keep the engaged page updated when we have changes like that. So I'm going to hand it, I think, back to Jan to do a summary of the engagement that we've heard so far.
Thanks, Andrea. So yeah, Andrea talked a little bit about the prior community engagements, the engage page. So, through that process, we got over 100 responses, which is really phenomenal. Overall, and Andrea will talk through this a little bit more, there was a preference for concept number 1. Also looking to expand the half-court basketball to full-court basketball. Got quite a bit of feedback, a preference to not have deck hockey at this site, but to include pickleball. We also heard folks asking to expand the play areas and the spray pad as much as possible. Also got some feedback that, while it wasn't in concept 1, to include the shelter and the grill from concept 2, expanding the walking path around the space, including the ball field, reducing the length of the outfield fence, again, not removing it completely, but some of the portions toward the wooded area, adding meadow plantings and soften the impact of the ball field, so that it's more of a multi-use space, and then including exercise equipment from concept 2 and install that along the walking path, and then where possible include parking. So I think Andrea now will talk about the revised concept.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. So keeping in mind some of the key feedback that Jan just summarized, this is the revised concept. And it starts with maintaining the 2 off-street parking spots that were proposed from concept 1. And one of those would be an ADA space, and that's shown at number 1 on the plan. We've expanded the spray pad, which will include about 3 to 5 spray features, as well as expand the play areas for ages 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. And those are numbers 2, 3, and 4 on the plan. And as Jan mentioned, one of the favorite features from concept 2 from our first meeting was the pavilion and grill space. So we've added that to the revised concept, which is shown at number 5. We relocated the court space towards the lower kind of left of the page, and made sure to expand from the previously proposed half court to a full court basketball. We got a lot of feedback about that needing to be a full court. And then we also added pickleball, and that's number 6 and 7. We are going to maintain stormwater management opportunities throughout the space, and that's being shown within the green space between the courts and the play area, and that's number 8. There's several locations for that. And we also maintain the walking loop around the play spaces. That's number 9, which connects to the ADA walkway at 10. Going down to the existing field and park building level. And then that continues around the perimeter of the ball field. So you would be able to do a complete loop essentially around the park with that walking path. Has an alternative way to get or to kind of connect these 2 spaces. We've also included an embankment slide and stairs that go down the hillside at number 11. And depending on some of the discussion that we have today, we're going to look at updating the restrooms and kitchen to make the park building kind of a more rentable community space, and that's shown at number 12. And then as we move on to items, I think are 13 and 14, the feedback we received was really open to revisioning the ball field to be more of a multi-use green space. We would still maintain the baseline and update lighting fixtures, dugouts, and bleachers so that the diamond field sports could still occur. But then you'll also see that we are reducing the fencing kind of adjacent to the greenway in the outfield. And then adding some meadow plantings to soften those edges a bit. And then that continuation of the walking path with some of the outdoor fitness equipment stations and also some benches around the perimeter that would serve also as a connection to the greenway. Or as I mentioned before, you could make that complete loop around the park. So let's go to the next slide. And so this is just a bird's eye image of the design improvements that we just discussed on the previous sheet. Go to the next one. Okay, so getting into the play equipment, we'll look at some of the different playground equipment and spray features and fitness equipment that's represented in the design. In the previous meeting and engagement survey, we presented 3 different styles of playground equipment, and the style that was most preferred was nature inspired. And so the equipment selections are meant to fit into that aesthetic, and I think they're pretty cool, and they're different from anything that we have in any of our other city playgrounds. So it's pretty neat to see that this playground would have its own sort of identity. So this first slide is looking at ages 5 to 12 equipment. The top left would be an example of the modular structures, which is a little less prescribed than what you would normally see in some of our playgrounds. And then there's a climbing structure to the right of that, spinners, and the bottom left shows an example of a pendulum swing, which is a kind of fun variation, again, that can be used by multiple children or adults as well. The bottom center shows an example of an inclusive nest swing. We've been installing these in some of our newer city playgrounds, and they become pretty popular with kids of all ages and abilities. The next image is the embankment slide that we mentioned is connecting sort of the upper play area with the lower ball field. Adjacent to that is the boulder scramble and the stairs. And then the last image is showing an example of different types of hangout areas that can be incorporated into the play space, which is nice for teens or kids that have sort of sensory processing, or just need a place to kind of tuck away from the busy activities. Those are nice to have. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the corresponding equipment for ages 2 to 5. You'll see in the upper left the modular equipment that has some nice ground level activities, as well as some sensory pieces, which make it nice for kids of all abilities. Then we're showing some spinner seats and springers on the top right. The lower left and center images are showing some different types of swings that can be included. The ADA swings are pretty popular among children of all abilities, so those are nice to have. And the last image is a type of playhouse or storefront that's great for imaginative play. Let's go to the next. So these are examples of the spray features that are typically included in a renovation. We're showing 3 different types of features here: the misting type, the overhead spray, and ground jets. And then the bottom row of images is showing examples of the different types of exercise stations that would be situated along the pathway in the outfield. Next. Okay, so when we get into the Q&A and discussion portion in just a couple minutes here, I'd like for you to consider how you'd like to see the park building utilized in the future. That's something we really haven't heard back yet on. So some suggestions here on the right are and shown on the plans in terms of renovating for community use or rentals, or restoring the building to press box or concession use. And as part of those renovations, we could look at upgrading the restrooms for public use as well. Next slide. Okay, and lastly, we're showing some of our standard park amenities that will be included in the design. I know they're a little bit hard to see when you're looking at a concept view, but we will include benches, picnic tables, site lighting, a new park shelter as we showed on the plans, bike racks, water fountain with the pet fountain and the bottle filling station, and then of course trash receptacles and a grill associated with the pavilion. So that's all I have in terms of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it back to Jan, and we can sort of facilitate the Q&A and discussion.
Thanks, Andrea. So I'm bouncing between two screens here. So if folks have questions, feel free to come off mute as I call on you. Otherwise, again, if you prefer to put it in the chat, I can try to interject with those questions. So I think I see Shay Moore with a question.
Hi. I don't have a question. I have a few concerns, if that's okay.
Sure.
So one thing that I really think is important is to talk about what the deal with the bathrooms will actually be. Because I am a parent that tries to stay at the playgrounds all day. And one of the major hurdles that I face in Pittsburgh parks is bathroom accessibility. And I'm lucky that I have two boys because I can just be like, go pee in the grass over there. It's not a big deal. But so many playgrounds have, either terrible, porta potties, or even in Squirrel Hill, like the Whiteman playground was redone and it's beautiful and it has bathrooms and they have adult changing table bathrooms. The bathrooms are always locked. And I know recently, I was listening to a story about, and I know you guys all remember the toilet in the South Side that's like the self-cleaning toilet. And it was a great idea for a few months, but there was just no actual plan in place to keep it open and to keep it functional. So as much as I love the idea of having, bathroom renovations, it's not useful if they're always locked. So I want to see a plan in place to actually either fund, a way to actually keep the bathrooms open and useful. I know most people wouldn't be excited about the idea, but honestly, like going to like county parks, the pit toilets, they're fine. And they don't require shutting down in the wintertime and things like that. So I just want to make sure that that's something that is being thought about now and not just like, oh, we're going to make these toilets and these bathrooms, which will be nice in the building, but they're only nice if you get to use them. So I want there to be like a plan in place to actually be able to access them and have them be maintained and clean and all that wonderful stuff.
Sure. Do you have other comments, or should I, is it okay to respond?
Yeah, no, I have a code. So I have the three big ones that I have are the bathrooms, and then also the spray pad. I just want to comment, and I know that the spray pad that we have there now is just like a sprinkler, and who knows how long it's been there, maybe like 50 years. And I know spray perk technology has come a long way, and we're thinking more about, how to keep it sustainable. But right now where the spray pad is located, there are a lot of trees and it's shaded. So after like a few weeks in the summertime, that ground area gets so slick because there's not sunlight to kill whatever, bacteria, and like a lot of mold and green stuff grows. And it just becomes almost unusable because it is just, not that it's like too disgusting, but it like literally is like just like a slick slime layer on the ground. where the actual water is, so that, like, I remember the last time my kids were there, they went over and they ran, they were so excited, and immediately somebody slipped and split their head open. So I'm just concerned about, when designing, to make sure to think about, like, where the sunlight, which direction it's coming from, where the trees are going to be, what the ground will be made of, that it's something that, will able, to be drained and dried and all that stuff. And then my last question or concern is with the grill. And I know that I see this at, like, county parks, they have, usually when there's a grill, there is some sort of receptacle for hot coals. That's all.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for all of that feedback. I'll kind of just go through real quick each of those 3 points. So the restrooms, definitely hear you loud and clear on that. It's something that we hear on pretty much every park project that I work on at the city. I will say that the city and DPW specifically is working on to get a plan in place so that, 1, we can provide restrooms, and that 2, they're open, and 3, that they're clean. So Whiteman was actually included in a pilot program that we started, I think it was fall of last year, where we have a cleaning contract to go out and clean those every day. Now, they're not open all year round. They're just open basically Memorial Day through end of October, sort of November, when things start to freeze. But this would be another situation where we would provide restrooms, but then need to add that into the plan for cleaning. So definitely hear your concern about that, and we want that as well for this project, and honestly citywide. The pit toilets are something we're considering, but it has to be pretty site specific. Here we already have the infrastructure for restrooms, so we would likely just provide the public facing restrooms in this situation. But definitely a good suggestion. We talk about the county parks a lot. So the spray pad, I think that's something we can take back as a design team and make sure that, trees are not too many trees are being planted around there to get enough light and ensure that surface is safe and drains properly. But you're right, the technology has come a long way, and we have a great design team who will make sure that it drains. So, and then the grill, so the way that we do grills is that they are installed next to pavilions that are permitted. So those are always being cleaned out by DPW staff. We don't provide the receptacles that you're referencing, because the reason for the permit is that someone's assigned to come there and clean it out after the fact. So hopefully that helps. But thank you for all your feedback. It's really helpful.
Thanks, Andrea. And Shay, if there's any follow-up, feel free to raise your hand again, but I see James' hand raised now.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I mostly just want to say that I'm really impressed with this design. And I think it's a lot better than both the original pair of concepts that we were presented with. I really like how it's not centered on courts. And the 2 small courts that we do have are really kind of elegantly situated away to put the focus on less structured play for multiple age groups. This is the one thought I have, which is, I don't know how appropriate it is, but what are the options in terms of trees? And would we, I know this is going to sound like a crazy idea, but I'm with the RCO of Spring Hill Civic League. And one of the things that we've battered around is planting fruit trees on our lot. And I can see other people, saying yes. I personally am growing Asian pears, less than a mile away from here, which are just a delight for everybody when they come into fruition. Of course, there's pawpaws as a native option. Is that something that could be considered for this project?
I'm going to answer the first part of that, and then I'm going to defer to our consultants on the call on the second part. I think that we can. We're doing that on a different project at the city right now, and I did receive permission to plant fruit trees. We in this situation would need to steer away from the play area and the court space just because of the maintenance responsibilities in those spaces. But what I'd like John or Eric to weigh in on is potentially adding it to sort of the outfield space where we have some of the meadow area proposed, since we would be getting a little bit more sun out there. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, Andrea, I think you're spot on. As always, that the maintenance is the concern from DPW perspective in terms of leaf and fruit litter. So if we can do it, we can concentrate it along the pathway. I think that would be a wonderful option. The other aspect, fruit trees, when they go in, typically are rather small. So we just need to be cognizant of the fact that, they could be prone to some vandalism. It's really easy to snap branches and in some cases trunks. So I just would be cognizant of that fact. We need to spec them at a decent size, but be aware and just kind of self-policing in the community to make sure that we are, the children are acting appropriately and not doing damage to them. So, but it's a wonderful idea, and we certainly will take that and consider it moving forward.
Thanks, John.
All right, thanks. Andrew, do you have any other follow-up, or should we move on?
No, I was going to ask if James had anything else, or that was all of his.
No, that's it. Thank you. Thank you for being open to this idea. I think it would really make the park a special place. And of course, understood about the fact that it will take a while for them to grow in, but we are planning for the future.
Great idea. Thanks for sharing that.
I see a question in the chat, but saw Michael's hand raised first, so we'll go there, and then I'll jump in with Dan's question.
Hi, yeah, thank you for this presentation. And I will preface this with saying that my lot is adjacent to the playground, so I've got even more vested interest in the what looks like a tree line between the basketball court and the adjacent properties. And is that how that is envisioned? And my question would be is, how are those trees going to be maintained? Because it's been my experience in the 18 years that I've been here that the trees have not been maintained that are here. And I've had to do my own servicing on and trimming of trees that aren't on my property. And then another question I just have is there any plan in this about updating or fixing the sidewalk on the Romanhof side of the park? And the one thing I'll add, like all of the work that was put into installing the sidewalks around the Brady home, and it's ADA accessible from Hespin Street, but there's no way to get off of the sidewalk on the other end of Romanhof if you're in a wheelchair or otherwise disabled.
Thanks, Michael. I'll take the first question along with my team, and then I might hand it off to Councilman to address the sidewalk question. So the trees that are shown there, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but those are existing. And I don't know that we have the property line on here. Do you know if those are all on our property, or I think we would have to evaluate whether those are on our property, but it's certainly something that if those are on city property, we could work with our forestry team as part of the project to get some of those cleaned up.
Hi, Andrea, and the group. Yeah, so it looks like those are rendered on this site plan as existing conditions or existing trees. And it looks like based on the survey we have that most of those are on park property. Again, we'll have to confirm that and do a proper kind of evaluation of the specific trees on that edge and on the all existing trees for that matter. But our intention was not to add additional trees on that section because there are, fairly mature trees along there. I think adding any along that stretch would, potentially cause root disturbance to the existing.
Thanks, Eric. And part of the scope of the project, which we talked about a little bit earlier, is that we are going to look at all of the trees on site and sort of evaluate condition again for preservation or replacement. So that will include any trees that are on city property, including that space. The question about the sidewalk on Romanoff, so that is not part of the scope of the project for this specific park project, but I don't know, Councilman, if you have any insight as to whether there are plans for replacement or expansion of that sidewalk.
If I could just hear the question again, the question was Romanoff sidewalk. You're wondering, will that be replaced?
Yes, that was my question. Also about the ADA accessibility from the end closest to Rockledge. There is none there.
Okay, Rockledge is on the other side. In terms of the ADA accessibility of the park, I'm seeing, and Andrew, you could correct me if I'm wrong, I'm seeing
we're providing the ADA space off of Southside Avenue, so that is the main entrance there. So there's parking or potential drop off, and then once you get to that point, the entire site will have an accessible route.
But in terms of the sidewalk that's on the upper part of Romanoff, I'm not aware because there's not a current plan to replace all that sidewalk. Is it in poor shape? I honestly don't.
There are cracks in it, and there are trip hazards.
We'll take a look at it. I'll have Domi take a look at it, and then Andrea, is there an opportunity to do an ADA entrance from Romanoff?
We would have to have a pretty extensive switchback down that hillside. So that's not something that we were evaluating.
Maybe we can look at, I can have Demi look at if there's an opportunity on Southside Avenue to connect on that side. But I guess I'm not sure how you would do it from Rockledge.
Yeah, and I wasn't even referring specifically to access to the park. It's more community based, that if someone is getting off of the bus from on Southside Avenue and has to come down Romanhoff to get to the other end of the neighborhood, there's no way to get off of Romanhoff after you get past the ball field. There's no ADA accessible exit there.
That hillside prevents a big challenge. So I think it looks like the best opportunity is to provide better access to Southside Avenue. Does that make sense?
Councilman Wilson, I think what he's asking for is just simply a curb cut at the end of Romanoff there, near the intersection where the sidewalk ends. Currently, there's a curb there, so you can't come across the street at Rockledge and get up onto the sidewalk to go.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Romanoff Street.
We can look at that. Yeah, we can look at that. I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
Okay.
So, so basically a curb cut and a crosswalk to come from Romanoff onto Rockledge.
Right. Yes,
Okay,
thank
yeah, we
you.
can look at that.
And I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Like I said, you know, public community engagement on these parks projects, but I'm also, you know, happy to connect people with resources and questions along with the councilman that would be, you know, targeted toward DOMI or anything like that. So I'll put my email in the chat if anybody needs it. I think we're on a related question from the chat. Dan is asking, does the plan include updating or rebuilding the stairs that provide access from Romanoff? The top portion was recently rebuilt, but overall it is in below average shape.
That is something that I did discuss with DPW. We, from what I understand, the construction division just replaced those with wooden steps. So we were planning to leave those in place, and then at a later date, if they, you know, reach the end of their life cycle, then we would replace those in-house with our DPW staff, either with concrete or more wooden steps. But those are not part of the scope of this specific project.
Okay, and then there's a comment about you know, supporting fruit trees, saying the fruit litter decomposes. I think we addressed Megan's question about the trees being on the park side. Mr. Nicotero is asking, will the fence be extended up a bit because baseballs and such have almost hit my truck and have hit my garage, and I'm worried about it breaking a window?
Yeah, so if we can go to the bird's eye view, I didn't mention this when I was walking through things, but I think it's important to see that we're not removing all of the fence. We're actually keeping the fence along or installing new fence along the section of Southside Avenue. So John or Eric, how high is that fence currently? And I imagine we do have the option of extending it higher, but I'm just curious to know the height, if you know that off the top of your head.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do think that it would be the existing fence would be removed, and we would put a taller fence in there just to protect that area.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that, since I did forget. Do you have any other questions? Megan, do you have some comments?
No, I was just in the car. We're good. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands raised or any other questions in the chat. Again, you know, if there are any, now is a great time to ask them while we have Andrea and the team here. All right, here's a question. Is there any plan for community art to be included or incorporated in the park?
We do not have a plan at this time to include any community art. We do have, there used to be a requirement in the city where we used 1% of the funds towards public art, but that is now shifted to the Department of City Planning. If there is a specific interest from the community to have art or, you know, mural, something like that in the play space or even down along the path, we can start those conversations with public art.
Thanks, Andrea. And I see Shay's hand again.
Hey. Hi. One last thing, I just wanted to join James in making the plea for the fruit trees, because I do think that the concerns about the fruit trees, like fruit litter, obviously that'll just decompose. That's not that big of a deal to me anyway, as a Spring Hill resident. I don't mind that. And then also with like kids vandalizing trees or snapping off branches. I mean, we're going to be buying trees anyway. So I don't know really what the price difference is between, purchasing a fruit tree. So if you're really worried about vandalism of trees or things like that and fruit not going, but I do think that it is important. One of the major things to curb vandalism and things like that is to really make it a very inclusive place and to make sure, especially that like teenagers feel ownership over the park too. Because when you feel ownership over something, then you're not going to want to destroy it. And, I think after a season of realizing that like, hey, these are our park's fruit trees and our neighborhood fruit trees, and they give us this gift of delicious fruit. I'm a preschool teacher, and I know that like whenever we plant gardens, and even as a parent, like kids really respond well to watching that. And when they sort of make the connections and figure that out, then they get really excited for that sort of thing to come. Even my boys get very excited about James's Asian pear tree because they love it. And I think that instead of just saying like no, because kids might mess it up or whatever, I think that that's not a great way to look at it. And I think that, education and community engagement and getting everybody kind of excited about that project would be a much better thing in the long run.
For sure.
Can I say one suggestion? Bat boxes.
We're able to mute. There we go. Thanks, Shay. I appreciate that feedback. I just to kind of build upon what you're saying, I think that there's actually another question in the chat about signage, and I think signage, provides also an educational opportunity and could be placed along the trail and with the fruit trees and provide an educational opportunity as well. So those are all great thoughts. Jan, I think there's a couple other questions.
Yep. There's a couple additional ones in the chat, and then also a reminder for folks, if you have thoughts on the building. I think that was one of the questions we were hoping to get some answers on from folks. But Christian is asking, any plans for more picnic tables and benches? I see a few spots not otherwise being used that would be great sitting areas. Also mentions bike racks, signage, and then bat boxes around the concession to control mosquitoes. So a couple questions there.
Sure. Okay, so the picnic tables and benches, we discussed that kind of briefly on the park standards page. So you don't really see them in detail in this kind of high level view, but there will definitely be benches in both the play area. We usually incorporate player benches around basketball court and pickleball court. And then the pavilion itself will have 5 or 6 picnic tables in that space. And then the benches that you're seeing, I think we mentioned, there's a few that are along the trail in the outfield as well. And then the player benches and spectator seating near the ball field as well. So that is definitely being incorporated into the plan. The bike racks that will also be included, signage at every entrance. So we do have our city standard signage, which includes entrance signage. We have amenity signage, and then some interpretive signage as well, which is what I was referencing with some of the fruit tree and meadow opportunities. So some opportunities for education. Bat boxes, that's not something, I definitely have seen those in county parks. That's not something I've seen outside of Frick. I don't see a reason why we couldn't include them, but I'll have to just check and make sure that that's cool to do. But I love that idea.
Cool. Thanks, Andrea. And then I see Shay's hand again, and then Megan's hand.
I forget. I remember the timeline was up there, but before construction, is there another chance to sort of see the actual playground equipment? Because I know that we've seen ideas and the type of playground equipment that we're gonna purchase, but are we just like okaying the style, or is there gonna be more engagement about like what actual features, please?
So the images were, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The images that we're showing are pretty inclusive of what's being shown on the plans. We typically do get, though, a rendering from the vendor, the playground vendor, once the design is final. And so we can definitely post that on Engage, and maybe leave it up for a little bit for any kind of final comments or tweaks. And I can work with Jan to make sure that word gets out to all of you all. And then what was your other question? Did you have
Oh no, that was it. Just if there was
Okay.
going to be, or if this was like the last meeting sort of thing. To talk
Yeah.
about.
This will be sort of our last official meeting, but we do tend to post updates on Engage and solicit some more feedback that way. So if you're not subscribed to that page, just make sure you follow it, and you'll get those updates.
And I will, maybe while the next question is being answered or asked, I will look up the Engage page and I can drop that in the chat for folks as well. But I think Megan has their hand raised.
Great. Thanks, John.
Megan, I don't know if you're on, well,
Sorry,
you were muted, but we
I'm
can't.
sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. As far as while I love fruit trees, I would say I would vote that we actually keep them along the trail or on the hillside off of south side. Mainly just, I've done a lot of landscape maintenance and it will be messy even if it does decompose. As far as the building itself, I don't know if, I mean, as long as I've lived in the neighborhood, concessions hasn't been a thing. So I don't know how people feel about that, or if that would be something that could generate money for the leagues using it or for the neighborhood. But I do think the space being used for community meetings would be really lovely. And I think that's all of my comments as of right now, but excited about the design. The kids are happy about it. So good job. Awesome.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, interested to hear some other folks' ideas or thoughts on the building, because that is, it will require some money and investment. So we definitely want to hear if it's just restrooms you want. Would you use it as can you see it being used as a rentable community space? We definitely don't want to put money into something that won't be used as a community resource. So please let us know your thoughts.
Well, can I chime in here?
Yes.
All right. So I see an opportunity to, fix up the space that's on top. If we don't, then it's it's just going to be the way it is right now. So I'm thinking, because we're not going to tear down the building, right? We're looking to use the existing restrooms. So we might as well I think we might as well go ahead and, update the upper floor so that there's an opportunity for, just a space to rent out, or just a community space whenever, we're planning on having a meeting somewhere. Something doesn't work out, we can get access to the top there. I'm not really sure how big the space is. Do you remember what the square footage is?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I don't know, Eric or John, do you have that number?
I don't know offhand, but my educated guess would say that it's probably about 20 by 40.
Okay. Yeah, I just think there's an opportunity there. If someone doesn't want to rent out the picnic tables, then there's an opportunity to rent it a covered space, or possibly that goes along with the picnic table in case there is, rain on a birthday when someone's trying to have a birthday party. Not sure what all the options could be, but I just think why not go ahead with it? Since if we don't, then it's just going to sit there as unused space.
Yeah. Good. It's pretty nice. I think it would be a nice space if we fixed it up a little bit. Shay said, I play on softball and baseball league. Very excited to use the field. What is the brief history of the building? It's only used by sports teams to store equipment. I believe it used to be a press box and concession stand. So what the previous use was.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
And then Christian, I'm not sure if this is in relation to, or all of this in relation to that building, but community bulletin, wildlife education posters and brochures, display cases, lots of ideas for engaging neighborhood kids, gender inclusive bathrooms, wheelchair accessible, small kitchen for party rentals, storage space, for Spring Hills Tub Club, Nature Center, after school programming, desk space, etc.
Awesome. Thanks for all of that.
And then I see Shay's hand raised again.
Shay's hand raised again. Sorry, guys. I do just want to say that I do think that it is a great idea to invest in this building because we already have the infrastructure that's there. And in the 13 years that I've lived in this community, I have never seen that building be used for anything. And if we're going to renovate the bathrooms, somebody did say gender inclusive. I love that idea. Just make both of them just like toilets with sinks that people can wash their hands. That's fine. But I do think that it's a great idea if we're going to be putting money into this building. Like Bobby said, let's make it nice and a place that people want to rent, because then I feel like that's a good way to get money for the community. Like I said, I play on a baseball and a softball league, and we spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every season on permits for different things all over the city. And one of the things that we look for is, does this place have a bathroom? Like, does it have, parking and other accessible things? And they're both adult leagues. And so everybody loves when there is a baseball field next to a playground, because I take my kids to practice. And like, it's miserable when there's nothing. So I think that if we do invest in this building, it would be a great idea, in the future to be able to make a little bit of money for the community, renting it out, whether it be for birthday parties, any sort of civic engagement. Like you said, yeah, like if it's going all year round, like people are always looking for an event space. And especially if it's an event space that is connected to a playground and a baseball field, like that's a winning take. Like that's so many places that I go to, like, don't have what we have. So I think that we really need to invest and then, make it known, because if it's just a secret, nobody's going to rent it. But I think that it really, the potential for a lot of things is there. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
And sorry, Shay, didn't mean to sound like you were chiming in too much. And for
I always chime in too much. Don't worry, I'm used to it.
And for Christian, your wife is also entitled to her thoughts and opinions, so appreciate you sharing them. But yeah, Andrea, if you have thoughts or response, feel free.
Yeah, just a couple thoughts and a question, I think. If I may, Councilman, I think your goal here is to have a destination playground for the north side, and having this space in the building kind of lends itself to this future. improvement in the community. And so I'm glad to hear that people think it will be successful if we put some investment into it. And my question, I believe there was someone on from the RCO, and I was just curious if anyone knows where they meet and if this might be a space that you would utilize in the future if it was available.
Yes, I'm with the RCO. We currently meet at the school, the Spring Hill Elementary School, which meets accessibility criteria that I don't know that this space quite would. And also, I don't know if it would be capable of holding, the 30 or 40 people we aspire to have attend our meetings.
That's good to know. I was just curious.
Mhm.
I appreciate that information.
Andrea, I did have a couple questions.
Sure.
Do we have were we able to, was that opportunity still there to have the electricity at the pavilion?
Yes, we can definitely look at having an outlet there.
Okay, great. Yeah. And then also I like all the benches that are in the ball field space around the track. And then is there still an opportunity to put a bench on the switchback?
Yeah, I may have missed that in after our meeting, but there would definitely be space on the end there where Jan is kind of pointing with where he was. There we go.
Okay, great. And then is that a good visual for all the benches that are around the playground right now?
No, I don't think so. I think it's really hard to see
Okay.
all the benches. There are some shown there, but there'll definitely be a number of benches around each of those play spaces. I think someone else asked that a little bit earlier, as well as player benches and whatnot around the courts. So I think we'll make sure there's ample seating.
Okay, great. I don't want to miss the opportunity to have a lot of great benches. So
I appreciate that.
All right, another question. We go back to the building. Sorry, keeps jumping. Some examples of how that building would be used for events. If people were to rent it, how would they use it? Are there examples?
I think some of the examples that some folks already brought up: birthday parties, events for the sports organizations. I would say anytime we have a pavilion and a playground next to it, it's pretty much rented throughout the year. So this is, as Councilman mentioned, a kind of alternative space that could be rented and associated with the playground. Not sure if anyone else, from the community has any ideas of how that space would be used, but certainly for community meetings, if it's able to be accessible and accommodate the amount of people needed for the meeting. Any other thoughts?
I'm sorry to butt in here, but
No,
maybe,
please.
I mean, there is a great span of windows there, and maybe there's enough space for exercise classes like yoga or something that overlook how you re-envision the ball field with the the more natural look looking out into the field.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea, and that kind of reminds me also that city parks, and I believe also the PPC has some interest in programming this space. So whether that's in the building, and I think some of the ideas that came out earlier with some of the educational opportunities and wildlife and the fruit trees. There's a lot of opportunity for programming here too. So city parks may also be able to help us with programming and providing opportunities in that space.
All right, I will read a couple comments, but just so you all know, the meeting is being recorded, and I think the chat is included in that. So if you just have a comment, not a question, we can definitely take note of it. Park needs an Instagram. Want it to be a destination playground in the neighborhood. There's another vote here for public art, which I think Andrea spoke about a little bit. There is, the support for the fact that it's connected to the Greenway. And then one question, which is about street lights at the end, that jack end of Loop Trail for safety. I'm not exactly sure where that is, Christian, but maybe Andrea does. And then another suggestion is for 1 or 2 permanent disc golf baskets on the edge of the ball field. Andrea, I don't know if you know what the jack end of Loop Trail is. Maybe you can speak to that. Otherwise, Christian, if you have a more specific location.
I do not know if that's the trail that is coming out of the Greenway. Street lighting is not within DPW's purview. That would be something we'd have to discuss with Domi. But if you could clarify the location that you're referring to, I think that would be helpful. I guess while we're waiting to hear from Christian, I can address the disc golf baskets. I think we could probably take a look at incorporating those.
Just make sure I'm not missing any raised hands. Sorry. Not seeing any new questions in the chat. I think people have had really great feedback. It's 7:10. I don't know if folks have any last minute questions. Otherwise, just a big thank you all for coming out and sharing your thoughts on this design.
Jan, do we want to just quickly go to the last slide? I had some of the next steps laid out there.
Sure.
And I can
Yep.
and just review those real quick before we close out. So I think, as I mentioned earlier tonight, we do, with an RCO present, have to schedule the development activities meeting. That would be another opportunity, I think, to provide some additional feedback. Shay, I think you had asked that earlier. So we'll definitely share that information when that's scheduled. Another opportunity for feedback is also the Public Art and Civic Design Commission. So this project will have to go through both preliminary and hearing and action for Civic Design Commission. Those are all public hearings. So you're free to attend or provide comments ahead of those meetings. And then again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we will head into construction documents and permitting this winter through sort of the spring, summer of 2024. And then our hope is to bid the project and begin construction next summer into the fall. And then we'll plan to be open within a year or so of when construction begins. But with that, I think Jan already placed the link into the chat, but make sure you follow that Engage page. We do provide updates on there for both the project and those upcoming meetings. So it's really a helpful source for us to have. Councilman or Jan, do you have any other closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Andrea, for working towards this project, and the design team, John and Eric, and maybe I missed someone else from your team that's on. Is there someone else from your team, John, Eric? Okay.
Yeah.
Just two of us.
What's that? Just two, yeah. Well, thanks for creating a great visual for us to talk about. and also Jan in the mayor's office administration for for working hard to make sure everyone's engaged. Appreciate everyone's time, and Jan, if you have anything else, happy to hear.
Nope, I don't have anything. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks all for being engaged on Engage. If you have any neighbors that couldn't make it tonight, who have any last minute thoughts or contributions or interested in what's happening here, definitely feel free to share this information with them.
Great. Well,
thanks.
I'm hoping this is first of many more larger playgrounds on the north side that we can put in place here. So I know my family's looking forward to it, and I know a lot of our other Spring Hill families are looking forward to it. So thank you, everyone.